everybody. I'm Rebecca Foust, the current and soon-to-be ex-Marin County Poet Laureate, and I'm here today to welcome you to the second installment of our Rising Voices show. This is a show designed to showcase emerging talent in the poetry area in Marin and in the Greater Bay Area, and this is our second installment. The first one featured Javier Zamora, a local poet who came here from El Salvador at the age of 9 and is now doing wonderful things in the poetry world. Today's feature will focus on Marin Poetry Center, an institution that's been around for almost 40 years, still going strong, recently tremendously revitalized. And I have with me today 3 people to help me tell you about the center. One is Francesca Bell, who is our current chair and former events director. Another is Kirsten Neff, who's in charge of the anthology that you'll be hearing about towards the end of the show. And our wonderful guest poet is Sharif Shanahan, who read for the center last year and is actually going to read a couple poems for us today. Francesca, could you introduce Sharif?
Yes. And I do always like to share the anecdote about Sharif, that he is the only poet who's come to the Poetry Center that made me weep openly during a reading.
Me too.
So it's a real treat. Thank you so much for coming, Sharif.
Thank you for having me.
And here's Sharif's bio. Sharif Shanahan is the author of Into Each Room We Enter Without Knowing, winner of the Crab Orchard Prize, and a finalist for the Lambda Award for Gay Poetry and the Tom Gunn Award. His poems have appeared in New Republic, New York Times Magazine, PBS NewsHour, and Poem a Day. A Cave Canem Fellow, he has received too many awards for us to mention here today. A former Wallace Stegner Fellow, he is currently a Jones Lecturer in Poetry at Stanford.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm going to read a couple of poems from my book, Into Each Room We Enter Without Knowing. This is the cover. It came out at the beginning of last year, and these are 2 poems. Song. I wait each night for a self. I say the mist. I say the strange tumble of leaves. I say a motor in the distance. But I mean a self, and a self, and a self. A small cold wind coils and uncoils in the corner of every room, a vagrant. In the dream, I gather my life in bundles and stand at the edge of a field of snow. It is a field I know but have never seen. It is nowhere and always new. What about the lives I might have lived? As who? And who will be accountable for this regret I see no way to avoid? A core or a husk, I need to learn not how to speak, but from where. Do you understand? I say name, but I mean a conduit from me to me. I mean a net. I mean an awning of stars. And this next poem is called Homosexuality, and it's a sequence that is organized geographically, so each section has its own location. Homosexuality. 1. New York. These days, my sympathy narrows. In the Barracuda, I sip a dirty martini, my back against the bar. In the half-lit glitz, marionettes bloom from the ceiling, the walls. Stringless, they fumble into each other, always about to fall. 2. Casablanca. My uncles find wives at the souk. Kautar and Latifa were sisters, now sisters-in-law. At home, preparing couscous, they slip gin into their buttermilk. Their men at the window calling down to boys on bicycles. 3. Laramie. Four, Florence. And are you here too, dear Brunetto? If I had not in those days found you among the other poets in the ghetto, would I now be here passing through this place, guided by the elder to the skies above the sky? How could I alone issue these words, this music in our sighs? Give me your book, your exiled hands. I will hold them as your unreadable eyes and walk with reverence on burning sands. 5. California. This initiative measure is submitted to the people in accordance with the provisions of Article 2, Section 8 of the state constitution. This initiative measure expressly amends the state constitution by adding a section thereto. 6. Newark, New Jersey, Cypress, Texas, Greensburg, Indiana, Tehachapi, California. Facebook asks, what's on your mind? Jumping off the GW Bridge, sorry. No note, no note, no note. 7. Zurich. As though recklessly we burn the old parchments in unison, cleansing the walls with their smoke, as though our bodies themselves have magnetized. Like at night, when I enter the room to join you in bed, and you, still asleep, reach out for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Why
you.
don't we talk a little bit now? I want to talk about the reading series, but before we do that, Francesca, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself as a poet and about MPC, its history, its mission, its purpose?
Sure. So I am a practicing poet, and I have my first book coming out from Red Hen Press in May, and it's called Bright Stain. I'm very excited. It's taken me a long time of raising kids to cobble together enough poems to have a book, and I'm really, really excited about it. And I feel like Marin Poetry Center has been a big support for me through the years of feeling so isolated. And so Marin Poetry Center was founded in 1981 by a group of Marin poets who wanted to bring poetry into the homes of people in Marin and also into the greater, broader community for the people of Marin. And our mission still is what theirs was then, which is to foster a love for poetry and to support people in the craft of writing. And it certainly has been a support for me in both of those ways, Marin Poetry Center. I think, writing poetry, writing anything is very isolating. And for me, not being a part of the academic world of poetry, it's been really the only place for me that I've had a sense of community and that I've had a group that I connect to. And so that's why I wanted to serve on the board, was to give back something that I got from to give back to an organization from which I got so much.
So it really intersects with our Rising Voices theme in at least two ways. It fosters emerging poets.
Yeah.
It gives them a place to go, it gives them a community, a physical place to go, a way to meet other poets, to learn from other poets, to refine their craft. But we also, at the center, feature a number of emerging poets. Sharif is one of them. And we feature poets. It seems to me that a lot of work goes into the choices of the readers that are brought in. So you are not going to necessarily see the readers that you're already seeing reading elsewhere in the Bay Area. Let's talk a little bit about one of the hallmarks of Marin Poetry Center, which is its third Thursday reading series.
Yes, so I believe pretty much every Thursday for the last 37 years, from September until May, the Poetry Center has hosted readings with either one or two poets reading, and I was thrilled to be in charge of that for 3.5 years, and I followed your advice, Becky, which was to try to focus on bringing people to our audience, to our membership, whom they wouldn't necessarily have the opportunity to hear, read, and interact with in such an intimate setting. And so sometimes we would bring in bigger name poets who are, the big fish, the really, really famous people like Marvin Bell, Dorianne Locks, Ellen Bass, Jane Hirschfield, Al Young, Natalie Diaz. You know, people that they might hear read in other venues, but maybe they wouldn't be able to interact with as intimately as they can at the Marin Poetry Center readings. And we always have a Q&A after each reading, and it's really a time that the poets, they're very open, I feel, with our membership, and it's really a warm time. And then I also have liked to bring in poets from other parts of the country who maybe aren't as well known, who are younger, or who maybe just haven't gotten to have, you know, such a big, loud stage and presence in the poetry world. And some of my favorites of those poems have been, Sharif was one, and then Sinan Antoun is a poet that I brought in. He's from Iraq originally, and he writes poetry. He translates in both directions because he's so strong in Arabic and in English, and he also writes novels. And then two of my other favorite poets that I brought in are Nicole Seeley and John Murillo. They're actually a married couple, and they're both well known, but I think they were new to a lot of our membership.
So one thing that we offer is a roundtable poetry workshop. This is like an MFA style feedback workshop where anywhere from 12 to 20 people show up currently at Falkirk, sit around the big dining room table, pass around copies of their poems, read their poems aloud, and then have the chance to receive constructive feedback from everyone in the room. They're led by Calvin Algren. He's been doing it for years. He does a great job. He keeps it supportive and constructive. You don't have to be afraid to go there. And a lot of us, including me, have cut our teeth on our early poems by going to these workshops. Yeah. Another thing is member Roy Mash runs a monthly book group that chooses a book by a contemporary poet or one from the canon that the group reads in advance, and then they meet in a private home and discuss every month. And I've been to a couple of those. Really fun. The discussion ranges from very highbrow to not very highbrow. And some of the books are difficult and some of them are less difficult. I think last month they read Ecclesiastes from the Bible, and next month they're reading Life on Mars, which is by Tracy K. Smith, our current U.S. Poet Laureate. Again, you can go on the website, you can see what books they've read in the past, what's coming up, and you can sign up as a member and then attend those workshops if you like. We also have something called a traveling show, which I'll let Francesca tell you more about. But basically, one thing about emerging poets and rising voices is it's really tough to get readings in good venues, particularly if you don't have a book. It's almost impossible. And even if you do manage to kind of gin up a reading somewhere, it's tough to get people to show up for it. Well, Marin Poetry Center offers a service that allows members to read in established venues, does all the PR, does all the groundwork. Basically, you just show up and read your poems to a great audience.
Yeah, so the Summer Traveling Show is really a chance for our membership to take poetry out into the community, which does, it performs a service for the members, but it also performs a service for the community by bringing poetry, right out in there. And so I think there are sometimes up to 50 events. It varies a little bit from year to year throughout the summer. And so each event has about 5 or 6 readers. Each reader gets maybe 12 minutes or so. The audiences are always big and appreciative, and they're held at places like Book Passage, which is very hard to get a reading at, our beautiful libraries around Marin, and also we have some events in the East Bay, and also we've had events in the city. As we're really trying to branch out and to reach other communities rather than just the Marin community. And so I think it's in April, you'll get a notification, if you're a member, that you can sign up to read, and there will be a list of all the venues and the dates that the readings are occurring, and you get to mark down your top 3 choices and then send it to the person who is running the traveling show this year, and hopefully, we're hoping into the future, it's Amanda Moore. She's a wonderful poet from San Francisco, and she will miraculously make up a schedule. I have no idea how they manage this.
Spreadsheet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the readings are incredible.
They are.
I've hosted several, and I always am, and I've attended many, and I'm always just so deeply appreciative of the fact that I live in a county with so much talent.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I'm always bowled over by it, And it's talent you don't necessarily encounter it just in day-to-day life. It's something I really, really love about that particular program.
And this is a tremendous service for emerging poets, because it's one thing to write poems, and then you're expected to figure out how to publish poems. And then you're expected to figure out how to get your poems out into the world by reading. Each one of these things is a major undertaking. And here's where Marin Poetry Center can really help with all of that. The last thing I want to mention, well, two other things. We have a monthly newsletter that goes out to members that keeps them up to date, not just on what the center is doing, but really tries to collect poetry news and happenings and things from all over the Bay Area. So there might be calls for submission, there might be news of contests, there might be news of readings at other venues. So that's just a great service. Sometimes there are book reviews in there, or even poems are published. We also have a Facebook page, so you can visit our Facebook page and see what we're doing. And then we have a high school poetry anthology that we put out every year that is a result of a contest that is run coming up pretty soon. In November and December, we solicit submissions from all the high schools in Marin, public and private. And last year, I think we got 1,700 submissions. We have a blind committee that reads these submissions blind without looking at the names and chooses, maybe about 100 of the top submissions. And those get published in an anthology that looks like this. This was last year's anthology, and this was the anthology from the year before. And so each of these students, they're mostly high school, sometimes a couple middle school students, gets to have their poem published or poems published in an actual book with a spine. And then we have an award ceremony at the Marin School hosted by the Poet Laureate. Last year it was me, who introduces each student, reads a short bio, and then the student gets to actually read their poem to a packed house. And Gabby Rillo and Angelina Quirk and others do a great job every year of catering this event. So it's a wonderful gala, festive celebration with balloons and food, and the kids feel great and their parents feel great. And in some years we even go into the schools and offer poetry workshops to help encourage the kids to submit poems. But honestly, our submissions have been so great that we haven't even had to do that in the last year or two. I'd like to read the winning poem from last year's anthology. This is by a poet named Rudy Perez Diaz, who wrote the poem in Juvenile Hall. And he was the subject of two features in the IJ, one in August and one in October. One was by Vicki Larson. So you can look those up and get some interesting background on Rudy. But here's his poem, We the Same Color. I'm black, and you black too, not in skin tone, but deep in your roots. You believe you're better than me, but really, I'm better than you. I realize we're all equal, all men, women, and children too. You could be white, so I'm white too. You bleed the same color I do. Skin tone is nothing, that's what got me bugged. You see me and you're quick to tuck your luggage. I'm brown and you're brown too. We got the same frown on a bad day too. You want to fight me, but I don't want to fight you. 'Cause if you lose, I know what you're going to do. Come back with more or call the men in blue, and they see color like you do too. I'm black and you black too. You white and me too. You brown with the frown. I'm brown with a frown just like you. Now where in the backwoods can we get along, me and you? So thank you, Rudy, for that beautiful poem. We're just thrilled to have it. There are lots of other great ones like that here. And of course, we always have these anthologies for sale at all of our readings if you want to. They're in the libraries too, if you want to pick them up and have a look. So that really leads us right into the last part of our show, which is to talk about another thing we're really proud of, which is for the last 37 years, we've been producing a very high quality anthology of poetry by our members. So we have with us today the last year's editor and the current editor, Kirsten Neff, and she's going to tell us about what's been going on and what's happening.
Well, as both of you said, you Becky and you Francesca, the Marin Poetry Center connects you to your poetry community. I'm a poet, and I thought, what better way to connect to my poetry community than to read hundreds of their poems in a fairly short period of time. Boy, it was overwhelming and inspiring at the same time. Overwhelming to choose, because I got 300 and some poems and was trying to keep it down, to a third or a quarter of that, and didn't do such a good job. I crammed this full.
We think
this is the 2018. No theme. I wanted to get a diversity of themes and subject matter, and boy did I. And I was also, while I'm looking at the book, I want to point out this beautiful photograph from fine art photographer Beth Moon, who donated her poem of Tennessee Valley Cove. Her photo of Tennessee Valley Cove.
It is a poem.
It is a poem in black and white. So what I wanted to do today was read just two poems that are representative of the diversity of poetry that we get here. I'm so sorry. Here it is.
It's TikTok, right?
It's TikTok, and it's Peggy Schimmelman from Livermore. Even now, while the meteors fly on this Leonid night, and this lusty cat yowls outside your transom, even now, with hope in remission, dreams in the closet, your gypsy soul dances wild in the night. Even now, as her jangling tambourine demands contrition for paths not taken, inspiration wasted. Even now, while your past is present in fragmented swatches, know that your future is revealing itself one tick-tock at a time. Wonderful. And the next one is by a poet who is a food poet. Her name is Jennifer Baroni, and she writes primarily about food. And so this is called Consider the Oyster, and in a nod to the wonderful food writer MFK Fisher. Androgynous hermit, sucking the open sea, clinging loneliness, filtered sorrow between its lips, where foreign imperfections spin an iridescent pearl between its shell, twisting darkness into light, buries itself in the muck, marinating seaweed, sauce of tender pulp, licking flesh, amorphous and vulnerable, fillets its talking mouth into a brutal open splice, raw with a quivering sigh on its quick dancing tongue, spiced with peppered citrus, may kiss you, taste you in return. The dripping, slippery ocean slides down your throat. So, submission period for the 2019 anthology will open January 15th and will go to March 15th. The theme this year is the wild. I chose that theme because I feel that climate change is very much on our minds, of the moment, and of great relevance. And yet I want poets to come to this theme with all sorts of openness, know that there's a wide range of interpretations of that theme. Mm-hmm. And I hope everyone will go to the website, marinpoetrycenter.org. Yes. Go to org and find the anthology button. You will be able to submit through Submittable, and I look forward to reading everyone's poems. You can submit up to 3 poems. So.
And then you get to read at the wonderful Read Around the following October,
right.
which is a terrific party.
Right.
And so anyway, I hope this has been a good introduction to all of you about this really incredible resource in Marin County that has been around for so long and is continuing to grow and change and evolve and is just doing some very exciting stuff this year. So thanks to all of you for being here. Thank you to Brian Jones, my co-producer on the show, and to all the tech staff here who made the show possible. And thank you to all of you readers for being interested in poetry and helping us support our rising voices here in Marin.